What's up, guys? My name is Jake. Welcome to Abandoned, episode 25. This, of course, is the show where we talk about some of the most interesting abandoned places in the world. One of the most interesting and ill-fated companies to leave a good amount of their stores abandoned. Kmart's largest competitor and the fourth largest discount retail chain in the United States when it ended. A company that originated out of the 50s American dream. I'm talking about Ames department stores. So in 1958, two brothers named Milton and Gilman Oilman opened a small general store in Southbridge, Massachusetts. The general store was named Ames and was kind of growing into a discount store, and Gilman saw an opportunity in the niche market for discount stores. So they began to open Ames stores in rather rural areas where competition wasn't local. This resulted pretty profitable for the two brothers, and soon after in 1962 they incorporated Ames as a company. As the 70s came in, Ames continued to expand steadily in the Northeast United States. The company began purchasing and acquiring other brand name stores to add to the company's assets. This continued in 1978 when Ames acquired the Neisner Brothers chain, which was extremely popular in the early 1900s, for a reported $38 million. This big-ticket purchase proved to be a bit of a poor idea, as when Ames acquired them, they were already struggling as a brand, and soon later, Ames closed the majority of their stores. However, it was Ames' strategy to buy out struggling brands and work to turn around their operations. This strategy actually proved to be quite successful and profitable for the company. Ames had a pretty great strategy for sales in their main stores. Prices on well-known merchandise was indefinitely kept low, which prompted easy marketing to consumers who lived in proximity to an Ames store. By 1981, the company was now operating 115 discount stores, which ranged in location from Maine to Maryland. With this formula working for the company, and the brand turning a profit for 8 straight years, they ended 1981 with sales of around $400 million. With the steady sales and high profits, the company began a major overhaul to all their properties. Ames began to add departments to their stores to organize their products more effectively. They also enhanced the quality of their clothing, as well as began the sales of jewelry. They also started remodeling their department stores to add more sales space, in hopes that it would increase profits even more. These additions and enhancements proved to be very effective and increased overall sales by 25%. With Ames continuing to acquire more discount store brands, and with all of their stores at a steady growth, by 1985, Ames ended the year off with over $1.7 billion in sales. However, the company began to get ahead of themselves. After a relatively poor company acquisition, Ames' net sales significantly dropped from 1985. But this didn't stop the company and their ambitions, as in 1988, they made a pretty big $800 million acquisition of the Zayre department store chain. With this move, Ames became the third largest discount store brand in the United States, and gained close to 400 new stores. While this did seem like a good plan, as Ames could now move into new markets and in new states, if you look deeper, Zayre's properties were notorious for being sold far below their actual value, as a result of the company's major losses at the time. However, Ames executives assured that this was a solid plan and that would boost the company. Because the Zayre name was so well known in their local areas, Ames decided to just keep the names as they were, simply for brand recognition. However, the stores were converted to Ames' pre-established operating standards. With all this money being spent in 1989, it resulted in a disappointing spring quarter, and by the end of the year, the company was forced to present a loss for the first half of the year. As the economy of the Northeast United States slowed, Ames' projections and hopes for Zayre's success kind of weakened. Even though Ames' sales were steady and even increasing, the net profits were being brought down by Zayre's slumping earnings, dropping off by 15% with a $7 million loss. This brought Ames' net sales down to $28 million a year. This was a steady and alarming decrease for the company's sales, and marking a scary inevitability for the company. As the Zayre stores continued to underperform, Ames decided to close another 15 stores, most of them located in rather close proximity to other Ames stores. This didn't help, as Ames was taking on huge amounts of debt from the dying Zayre's brand. Manufacturers were denying shipping merchandise to their stores, and banks began refusing any more loans to the company. This led to Ames filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on April 25, 1990. As a result of the bankruptcy, Ames suspended all its advertising to cut down its seriously dangerous operating expenses in an effort to dig itself out of the massive hole the company had dug itself. The company was able to secure a $250 million loan, and with this loan being used to pay off their debts, the company was forced to close 221 of their stores and lay off another 18,000 of their employees. Even with the extreme downsizing of the company, Ames still reported a loss of $538 million in the first half of 1990. Ames continued to close more stores and lay off more of their workforce, and with new management, the company began shedding off their debt. And by the third quarter of 1992, the company's losses were only at $90 million. And by December 20th, 1992, the bankruptcy court approved Ames to exit its Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The new Ames was now considerably smaller than its massive peak of over 600 stores. The company now only operated 309 stores in 14 different states. Ames was now only a smaller and essentially a shell of its former self. As the early 90s continued on, and as Ames executives continued to leave the company, including their CEO, Ames actually began to show some really good recovery in its finances, as they reported an actual profit of $10 million in 1994. It didn't help that Walmart was rapidly expanding in the Northeast United States, directly competing with Ames. This prompted Ames to pour more of their money into modernizing their stores, almost 55 of them in 1994. And with the ever-growing competition and the decision to cut back on their operating costs, Ames closed another 17 of their stores and laid off 1,000 of their employees, in which Ames was charged $20 million for. This left Ames losing $1.6 million by the end of 1996. Despite the loss, the company actually returned profitable by the end of the following year, with a net profit of over $30 million. But then, Ames made a risky move to acquire another department store chain, because the other one went so well for them. So Ames acquired the 155-store Hills department chain in 1998 for about $330 million. This was an absolutely massive chunk of Ames's finances, and it didn't help that the Hills chain was struggling at the time Ames bought them out. However, this did promptly increase Ames's market share, making it the fourth largest discount store chain in the United States. Ames was right behind the giants which led the market. They were Walmart, Kmart, and Target, and Ames was trailing right behind. So Ames absorbed the 155 Hills stores and turned 150 of them into Ames locations, which was an additional and hard-hitting cost of $185 million. As 1999 came in, Ames made some more additional acquisitions to grow its chain even more. Despite their attempted growth, the company ended with closing 8 of their stores. This was the initial downslope the company wouldn't be able to get off of. By late 2000, Ames had closed 32 of their stores, 31 of them being from their newly acquired Hills properties. The company had known the decline was getting worse, and cutbacks were imminent, and some deadly reminders of the 1992 bankruptcy were looming back in. By August of 2001, the company closed another 47 stores. And as an initial fear for the company's structured stability, Ames filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on August 20th of 2001. As the company continued to figure out ways to restructure, more stores continued to close, including an entire distribution center. By holidays of 2001, Ames had closed another 54 of their locations. And by June 2002, Ames was left with 327 stores. The debt the company had racked up, massive taxes, slower shipments from suppliers, decreasing sales, and the substantial decline in quality and reputation from their stores began to show massive problems for Ames. Building competition from Walmart with their strong expansions into what was known as Ames's territory proved to be just too much for the company to handle. And all of this built up to one moment. On August 14, 2002, when Ames announced they would be opting for Chapter 7 bankruptcy and closing all of their stores. Much like Blockbuster and Circuit City, Ames would be liquidating all of their assets in an attempt to gain as much profit out of the dying company as possible. Ames was just getting back on their feet after the 1992 bankruptcy, and most analysts believe that alongside all the problems I mentioned earlier, that the Hills Company acquisition is what pushed Ames over the edge and proved to be a fatal purchase for the company. So all of Ames's stores began to liquidate all assets from their property. In just a month, the company had ceased all operations and closed all of their stores. Some stores, along with their unsold stock, were initially, and in some cases indefinitely, left completely abandoned. The 44-year-old company had met its end in the slow and deadly economy of the early 2000s. Some locations were bought out by other retailers and converted into their own respective brands. However, many of their stores, and even the corporate headquarters in Rocky Hills, Connecticut, were left completely abandoned. As of 2016 though, a good amount of the former Ames stores had been reclaimed by other businesses and companies who needed the space. But there are still some remaining stores that still sit vacant and completely abandoned, some in absolutely terrible condition. The video Dan Bell made on an abandoned Ames location in Baltimore shows the absolutely terrible condition the store is in. Unbelievably too, the storage and stock rooms in the back of the store remain completely filled with merchandise they just never sold. At this point, locations like these probably can't be sold or leased to anyone in these conditions, and theoretically their only option now is to demolish the structure. Ames was absolutely massive in the areas it took over with in the 80s. Its slow decline left it in ruins for many years, until things began to look good, only for a rather abrupt and quick bankruptcy. It is rather sad to see a company who saw their glory days in the 80s to no longer exist. And towards the end, it was a pretty terrible brand, and known for some pretty sketchy things in the discount store market. However, many do have fond memories of Ames in the early days, and it really did have quite an impact in discount and even retail stores today. I legitimately think Dan Bell's video of the abandoned Ames store is probably one of my favorite exploration videos on YouTube. The video is such a unique, and for someone like myself who is fascinated by abandoned retail, it's absolutely incredible to see. So I seriously suggest you go check it out. Anyway guys, my name is Jake. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And thank you very much.